Thank you.
Yep, so recording is beginning. All right, so we'll officially, a few more people joined us in the meantime. So welcome everyone. My name is Stephanie Kruger. For those of you who haven't met me, I have a small appointment on the NTK Academic Services team in which I represent NTK on the IFLA DDRS committee, which is an international library committee. I also am associate editor of Evidence-Based Library and Information Services, which is a journal in Canada. And I have appointments at University of Chemistry and Technology in Prague as a consultant, as well as Czech Technical University in Prague. So I'm thrilled to be here today, and I've heard about many of you through Elena, so welcome. As I was saying, today we're going to talk a little bit more about European higher education before we start looking at STEMskiller itself. I think this is really important because you need to understand what is the life of a doctoral student. Some of you are doctoral students, but what are the career paths that are involved for people who are pursuing academia? So we're today trying to understand our users a little bit better, particularly those users who are considered, you've heard the term, early career researchers, and we want to think a little bit more about them and about higher education in general. When I say higher education, I mean university education and above. So that's the English term for that. So we'll do a live demonstration of STEMskiller about halfway through the webinar. I'll tell you a little bit more about future directions, and we'll open up things to discussion after. Elena will also send you a very brief 3-question evaluation following the webinar. And so we'll ask you to fill that out for our records. So today. So what I wanted to show you here, I wanted to start and really spur thought about how public higher education works in Europe. So we're going to really look at the big picture and then move in towards STEMskiller. For those of you who don't know, and I think many people don't think about that, particularly right now with everything going on in the world and all the chaos and all of the fun that we're experiencing with the COVID pandemic, I think it's important to understand that a lot of things that are happening in higher education are interactions with the European Union itself. A lot of that work you might not see on a day-to-day basis, but it's happening every day. Rectors of universities are working with what is called the European Higher Education Area. Many of the universities and the Ministry of Education in Czech Republic participate in this. And this is an initiative that's an extension of something that was called the Bologna process. I'm sure many of you may have heard about the Bologna process, but you may not realize that it's an ongoing process. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that. One of its most known characteristics is that the Bologna process implemented across Europe bachelor programs. So prior to the Bologna process, many countries, including I think the Czech Republic, but for example, Germany and France, many of their university degrees, the first degree that you could get was a master degree of some kind. You see some remnants in this in the Czech Republic with the ING degree that requires a master's for the most part. That degree comes with the master level and not at the bachelor level in most cases because of the Bologna process. That's all I wanted to say about that right now. So the European Union is working together with each European country's Ministry of Education and distributes money and distributes know-how and has many working committees about different issues that all of the European countries are facing. And this work happens really invisibly to most of us, but it's going on, as I said, every day. So there are people at the Ministry of Education who are trying to implement things that are happening at the European Union level. So when you think about other aspects of the European Union in our lives, like let's say COVID passports, it's very similar in that the European Union may dictate some things, but then there's national implementation of directives that are formed at the European level. The goal of all of this is to make higher education of better quality and more accessible to more people across Europe. Many people don't hear that message at the national level, but that is definitely at the documentation level of the European Union, what they are trying to achieve. Again, the bachelor programs did achieve this in opening up higher education to many more people than was possible in the past. This has positive and negative sides that we'll get to in the context of doctoral education, but we'll get there in a moment. And then every university, as you see here in the chart, is then part of the Ministry of Education of that particular country. And they have many choices when it comes to implementing European Union directives. So why do I talk about this? Because when we get to talking about doctoral students, postdoctoral education, how professors are rewarded and paid and what kind of jobs are available to them, the Bologna process does impact this. And it does, to a certain extent, dictate what's happening in higher education in Europe. And it tracks a lot of data that the Ministry of Education is expected to provide. So it tracks a lot of data about different student levels, about student success, about how many PhD students there are, for example, in every country. What are the requirements for getting a doctorate in different countries? All of this information is being analyzed, which one doesn't often think about, but it is, and with the goal of, again, improving quality over the long term, with some successes and some failures. In this Bologna process, I just wanted to familiarize you with the term doctoral students, or doctoral candidates, as they're referred to oftentimes today, are considered third cycle students, with bachelor level students being first cycle students and master's students being second cycle students. So some things that Bologna is implementing apply to different cycles of students. So, and doctoral students are a special category. All across Europe, with all of the ministries of education, with everything that's happening. And if you look at the Bologna process, documents and strategy documents that are creating strategy through the year 2028 and beyond, there's a real problem that many countries are facing, not just the Czech Republic, which is I talk about the European level, but it's across Europe. And in fact, it's across the world. And a big challenge is that once you get to the doctoral level, just think of yourself and your choices and your bachelor degree or master degree. You do those degrees, you kind of go through the system, and then many people, and think about your friends or others, do a degree and then they start working, right? So bachelor degree, complete the degree, many people start working. Some students decide to do a master's. So there are fewer people at the master level than bachelor level. When we get to the doctoral level, that number decreases even more. So in some countries like Czech Republic, there are perhaps not as many doctoral students in some areas as they'd really like to have, but in other cases, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, in some areas there are more doctoral students than there are jobs for. And this is the harsh reality that I think many doctoral students don't even think about when they get on the doctoral track. And this has implications for in many areas. But really, when we think about doctoral training improvements and where STEMskiller fits in, is that the traditional programs, which you see here on the slide, that are traditional apprenticeship models. An apprenticeship is basically like where the professor would take a student by the hand, spend so much time with them, and make them like a highly trained specialist in one particular area, with a disciplinary focus, very narrow, and with the eye towards getting them a position in research at a university. This model doesn't fit the real world today in many cases. It fits for a few candidates, and we'll see a kind of harsh picture about this in a moment. But there are many people that finish their doctorate, even do postdoctorate training abroad, in Czech Republic, many postdoctoral candidates, maybe some of you, are encouraged to go outside the country to do your postdoctorate training. And then when they're finished with this, maybe they do one postdoctorate position, a second postdoctorate position. After that, sometimes there's no job for them. So what do people do in that situation? They have a doctoral degree and they need to go find a job outside of academia. For the people that stay in academia, because there are more and more people in the world, more people getting doctorate degrees every year in many disciplines, the competition gets harder and harder, which means that most candidates in many fields, with the exception of very local fields, such, let's say you're studying Czech medieval literature, you don't really have an international level of Czech medieval literature, perhaps, although maybe with Slavic studies and this and that. But if you're doing engineering, for example, if you're doing structural engineering, there is an international level, international standards that you have to be competitive with. And what this means for doctoral training and for mentors is that now people are starting to think about how can we do a better job at training people with a doctorate to prepare them for jobs outside of academia in case they don't get one of those academic jobs that are fewer and fewer in number. And how do we make the training less specific so that people are able to solve complex real world problems? An example of a complex real world problem is what we're facing today with COVID, let's say in virology, where people in many countries are having to work together to analyze data together and to try to find solutions to really difficult problems. These problems are not just scientific in nature, but they also have social science dimensions, they have humanistic dimensions, and a lot of the confusion and chaos that we're seeing in some of the reactions to these problems are because, you know, experts are not working together across fields in many ways. So many good universities have decided to incorporate training and solving complex interdisciplinary problems into their studies. And I've included in the slides, and the slides will be posted. I've posted them already to ResearchGate, and Elena will send the slides to you. A really interesting lecture from the leaders of the University of Michigan's Rackham Graduate School about the state of the graduate school in 2021. And that's a YouTube video that you can review if you're interested in this topic. So getting to STEMskiller, which is envisioned for mentors and PhD students and above, what this means with all of these changes going on, with you've got European Union directives, you've got Ministry of Education directives, you have university policies and norms. And by mentors, I mean full-time university public employees, typically professors with a doctoral degree or higher. And I've listed here how, and you can see on the screen, how mentors are stuck in the middle of all of this. So a lot of you, I know we've had discussions, sometimes mentors don't do enough for the students and this and that, but they have a lot going on that I think people don't realize, and their job is big. And mentors are in the middle of everything. On the right, you see they have to perform research. Their universities expect them to publish a certain amount of papers. They have to conduct original research, think of experiments, think of new research topics, go to conferences, stay aware of trends. They have to teach classes, which means they often have to teach not just doctoral students, but bachelor and master level students. And then they have academic service obligations, which are serving on committees, international committees, for example. If their discipline has a professional committee, which is just of other people in the discipline. So for example, there's like a Czech mechanics society I was looking up yesterday for people in mechanical engineering. Those are the kind of academic service obligations that people might have. I know some professors that are volunteering, and I know some of you have volunteered in a similar way to do outreach outside of the scientific setting by teaching in high schools or volunteering for other organizations that need their expertise, that kind of thing. So that is one component of their job. And it's a lot. In addition to that, and that's the left-hand side of the screen, for the doctoral students that they have and for the postdoctoral researchers that are part of their research teams. These people, again, early career researchers or ECRs, they have to supervise and train those people in a very difficult domain how to conduct research. That means, how do they conduct original research? How do they create research methodologies? How do they work with scholarly publishing? What's expected in their field? They have to train the doctoral students and postdoctoral graduates how to teach. Oftentimes, this doesn't happen in your European context, but how to create classes that are interesting for students. This is something that I think in the Czech Republic, but in many countries, falls by the wayside. How to get more students inspired in their field. One problem that some of my professors that I collaborate with at CTU find is that it's harder and harder for them to find talented lower level students that are interested in their very difficult mathematically based program. So they're constantly thinking about how to recruit new students. And those of you who are doing a doctorate, you may have been recruited yourself in this manner. And then what also often falls to the wayside, just because of all of the stuff that you're seeing, is how to be a good academic public servant. A public servant is someone that serves the public. And as a public university, there is a kind of ethic that the best professors adhere to, is that you are, as a professor or as a teacher, serving the broader community. We've seen many examples of people failing in this regard, but many of the best professors are committed to training their students to also serve the public, serve others, to make sure that taxpayer money is not wasted, etc. To be a good example for others. These are the kind of ethics that are included in the best university programs in the world. And other universities try hard, and the best professors all around the world, regardless of the quality of their institution, try to emulate. So before we get into STEMskiller demonstration, a little bit more background here. I wanted to show you really, because I think people don't think about it and it's not shown explicitly, is kind of how harsh the path is at the doctoral level and above. Because it's basically a pyramid if you're going into either academia or non-academia. I'll start on the left with academia. Academia is defined by pretty clear rules. Sometimes these rules aren't implemented, consistently. They can change from university to university. But some of the rules they all share, regardless of country, is that they grant doctoral degrees to people, that you can't call yourself a doctor without that degree. That means you have to pass some kind of exams. You usually have to write a doctoral dissertation and conduct some original research. If you are doing a postdoctoral position and you decide, again, on the academic track, is there a question? Yeah, no? Okay. On the postdoctoral track, this is where people start to drop out. And actually, some people drop out before that doctoral degree. So that pyramid is, again, getting smaller and smaller. For many reasons, many people start their doctorate and they can make more money on that right side in a business, which is legitimate. But if you are going into university with a goal of being professor, you have to go through the left side of the pyramid. You have to do 1 or 2 postdoctoral positions. As I mentioned, these are typically done in different countries, but people often stay in the same country. But I find the professors in Czech Republic that I work with try to send their best PhD students abroad for their postdocs because they want them to get international experience and get used to the international specialization in their discipline. Postdoctoral positions are contract positions. This means they're year to year in most cases. Many people don't think about that. Sometimes there's a longer contract for the duration of a grant that a professor is working on, maybe 3 years, maybe 5 years. I know some people, Ibrahim was kind of brought as a PhD student like that, but postdoctoral positions work the same way. These are very unstable positions, and I think a lot of people don't think about that. So the goal at this stage of the game with postdoctoral positions is to kind of work on resume, work on CV, work to establish a reputation so that at some point, if they want to stay in academia, their goal of all of their effort, all of those years of training is to get a full-time job. That's and that's a lot of years to invest. That's a lot of time to invest, and it's not easy. It's, you know, the pyramid just gets smaller and smaller. So this means you have to do all those publications. Why do people publish? Because they have to apply to, with many other people, to full-time positions in the end. An example of this, I worked with a engineer from Czech Technical University in Prague. He was highly successful. He did a postdoc in Holland, and they brought him back on a project to the CTU Department of Civil Engineering, Faculty of Civil Engineering, Department of Mechanics, and they were unable, even though he was one of the most talented researchers they'd seen in many years, to find a full-time job for him. In the end, I helped him get a job in the Netherlands, where he has a full-time position. He has a path towards tenure, which is the next step in the academic process. And he basically had to move his wife, his girlfriend, his whole life to Netherlands. I spoke to him. He would have preferred to stay in Czech Republic, but the only full-time job he could get was there or in other countries. He kept his job search small where he had done a postdoc. He was asked by the people at the institution where he did his postdoc to actually stay at that university. And so that's how that happened. But oftentimes people have to apply coldly. So there are many tasks associated with this. And people, if they don't have a good mentor, they don't know what to do. And as we'll see in STEMskiller, STEMskiller provides information for them, okay, for different parts of this pathway. So then even if you get a full-time position, your journey isn't over if you want to be a full-time professor. You then have to do some work to get tenure. And tenure means that you basically cannot be fired easily from your job. Every university has different policies and regulations for this, but because that job is so stable and so secure, there's a tremendous fight to get tenure. You may see, and this is why sometimes the number of positions are limited in countries, because people stay in the job a long time if they have tenure. They have good pay, they have good benefits, they have nothing to perform. They don't have to publish as much anymore. Typically, they don't have to have good student evaluations as they did in the past. But few people get that. All around the world, not just Czech Republic, not just Europe, but in many countries, sometimes tenure can create problems for teaching, for example, for student quality, because maybe you have some professors that don't care anymore. And you all have seen some, I'm sure, in your student life, and they just go through the motions. But the best professors always give their best, and yeah, but they have tenure anyway. And then at the top of the period, a lot of people have tenure. If you get that far in your discipline, whatever it is, there are a few people that achieve disciplinary fame and glory. And I'll give you a couple examples of that. And then the typical path for the people that fall off the pyramid is that they move away from academia, which means working for places like a library, working for nonprofit organizations, and working for commercial organizations. And this, again, you can have a doctoral to do that. You can have done postdoctoral to do that in some companies and still do research, but the rules of the game are very different. And it's all based on the organization that people are working for. And just so you can see who's made it to the top of the pyramid. People think about these contracts. I think that, many people who are going and doing their job every day are kind of the heroes of the world. But when you think about when students start, they all think, maybe I'll get a Nobel Prize. Maybe I'll be one of these people. The problem is, in the world, there are very few of these people, and the people at the very top. And here you'll see some people that have this year become famous, the people from BioNTech. They were doctors and who'd gone through several postdocs in different countries, trained in Germany, trained in Switzerland, who decided to do a commercial startup, and they became now rich and famous. There are one or two people in the world like this, and I think students really don't understand that the stakes are this high. And then you hear on the right, you see an example with Borat here of Noam Chomsky. You may have heard of him from MIT, and I looked him up, and he's been full professor since the 60s. So he's been around for a longer than many of us, probably almost all of us on this call have been alive. So these people are shown oftentimes to inspire students to go into a field. But when people start a doctoral degree or start on the academic journey, I don't think they realize that while you may be smart, it's very, very difficult. There are many different circumstances in life that can happen. There are very, very few of these people. And I think a lot of students, when they start a doctorate, are maybe arrogant because they had a lot of success in the past. And then when it starts to get hard, when the competition gets harder and harder, that they have a wake-up call, and it's hard for them to deal with reality. And even more so at the postdoctoral level. So a lot of the work that I do with students at doctoral level and researchers is kind of everybody who's not at the top of that pyramid, so to speak. So just, again, think about how harsh it is. Of course, they don't really talk about this, but I wanted us to really think about it today, to challenge you to think about what this means for the students, to have empathy for them, for the problems that they're facing. I've had doctoral students come that are crying in my office. You may have had interactions like that because they are confused about the next stage of their life. The stakes are high. And our job is to assist them, in my opinion. And again, you can see, because of all this harshness, to come back and repeat this slide, this is why a lot of people, even people, professors with tenure that are full-time professors, are thinking, we have to do something to change this, and we have to do a better job of serving doctoral students, to serve the people who are falling off that academic pyramid. We have to help them prepare for other jobs that are not in academia, and we have to help them face changing realities. And I want to emphasize the first item, the preparing students for the expanded range of career options. I think I've seen students that have, for example, they are at the postdoctoral level and they've never had a job interview before. You may know people like that. They've gone through the system. They didn't take a break between their bachelor degree, master degree, doctoral studies, and then a postdoc. And then they get to a point where they don't know how to do an interview. They don't know how to write an application letter. And this is where STEMskiller comes in. And we'll get to this in a moment. So a lot of the best universities in the world are actually creating support services for these kind of things, with funding, with classes, with a big emphasis on improving everything I just mentioned. Here's an example again of the Rackham. I picked an American example of university I attended because they had really terrific, even for master students, courses, for example, on teaching methods, on writing evaluations, on creating classes. So I myself benefited from their work, and they've done a lot of improvement in terms of doctoral studies, and they're in the process of re-envisioning these programs today. And the things that we would typically think of in the Czech context, you often hear soft skills or transferable skills. These things are referred to as core skills. And core skills, you can see here, and these are everything that doesn't relate to this discipline specific skills, but that people agree are really important for young people and people at the beginning of their careers to know about. So core skill is how to create your career, how to define a career for yourself, how to collaborate with others, how to communicate with others, how to content expertise. You see here, that's how to publish and how to navigate the world of scholarly publishing. But now they're envisioning that beyond that, how to work with Twitter, how to create podcasts, how to promote scientific for example, things in the broader world where we know science, non-science people live. And right now in the real world, we see a lot of examples of why that's important. A core skill, understanding diversity. Diversity, not just gender equity, but diversity, gender equity of new kinds of gender understandings, equality of pay across different kinds of people, and inclusion of others. Leadership skills. This is often lacking in the European programs, I would say, is how to actually lead people and work with groups, how to manage a research group. This is a problem. I work with professors that we have weekly sessions where we talk about how to be better leaders of their research groups, for example. Personal well-being, this is a hot topic in the European Union. It's a hot topic everywhere, but maybe not on the scale. Like those of you who are at Eurodoc, it was a lot of the discussion was about stress, about personal well-being issues. This is a part of things, but not everything. But it is considered a kind of core skill for your life to take care of your mental health, all of this kind of thing. And of course, teaching, which is in a European context often left behind. Okay. So the next slide, just a second, there's a slight delay. So, all right. So for those of us not at the best universities in the world, but still at universities who are doing the best they can all around the world with dedicated professors, dedicated support professionals like us, working in libraries and other places, what can we do to help students and to help universities improve, to help mentors to reduce their burden? If you go back to the mentor slide, to reduce the burden, mentors being in the middle of all of this really have a huge burden. And I was thinking of Vojta in his trip to Nepal, and I thought of the Sherpas who carry everything. A mentor is kind of like a Sherpa, carrying all of this great burden, having many things to do, but doesn't have any help. At the best universities, they have a lot of help, and the burden is shared across others. So one second. So one goal of STEMskiller is to help share the burden with mentors by creating a 24/7 tool that mentors can use when a doctoral student, postdoc has a question, when they themselves don't know enough about a topic. For example, one question a lot of professors ask me about is interdisciplinarity. What does it mean? I get also questions about diversity. What does it mean? I see a lot of things regarding diversity. And I use STEMskiller myself when I get these kind of questions, and I'll show you a couple case studies and then we'll do a quick demo. So STEMskillers is really distributing the load across everybody so that mentors get some help, early career researchers, particularly those who might not have a really great mentor, or maybe a mentor who's just so busy doing research and doing teaching that they don't have time to help them understand how to publish a paper. Many of you have probably gotten those inquiries. Oh, my professor told me to publish a paper, and that's all the instruction they got. STEMskiller provides a set of tools that the early career researchers can read to understand, and then to do that task, and then also to get help if they need it by contacting those of us on the services team at NTK. Not just me, but others that we see on this call today. So, and everyone shares responsibility. And here you can see also, this is for you, and that's why we're doing this session today. STEMskiller is envisioned so that you also, if you get a question from doctoral students and above, that you can help people. You can read a little bit more, you can learn about a topic that you don't really understand. And yes, so that I wanted to make you aware that it's there, and I want you to assist in it when you actually have an inquiry. So all right, we'll move on to the next slide in a second. There's just a slight time delay. Okay, so here again, you can see the mentor in the middle, and this is just shared responsibility again. Now the mentor has STEMskiller that can help them again, this is English language mentors. I realize that. But on our campus, almost all of the researchers that I'm working with must work and publish in English. So I'm not working, for example, with a language department at Charles University with a lot of their work that might be in Czech. The people on our campus in Davidsa, because they're doing engineering, because they're doing sciences, most of the researchers' day-to-day work is in English. Some of their teaching is in Czech, but when I asked people about the vision for STEMskiller, they told me we want it in English and we want our students' English to improve. So we want you to provide it in English and English only at the start. And one thing to mention that you'll see, STEMskiller isn't original content except for annotations. It's leveraging open resources from those best universities in many cases. So we're trying to use the support services of the best university and providing a platform that can be used where basically everyone is sharing this knowledge together. That's kind of the big vision. Yeah. And when you think back to the core skills that I just showed you, STEMskiller mirrors those. We used a lot of different things. Sasha and I worked together on the hierarchy for this, and we wanted to group things in a manner for STEMskiller that made sense to the researchers. Sometimes as people who work in the library, they might not make as much sense to you if you're not doing this kind of thing every day. But these things, and I've done the user testing with some of the professors that I work with, do make sense to people who are professors on the Davidson Technology campus. Competencies are grouped by research and scholarship, learning, teaching, and supervising, which is everything related to education, career management, those kind of looking for a job, what the career pyramid, what is it? What do I do? How do I write a letter for a postdoc? That kind of thing. And then those new emerging topics about solving big world problems, engagement, involvement, collaboration, and transdisciplinarity and inquisitiveness. Really fun topics that often are forgotten when people are focused on their discipline. And within these areas, again, we created a hierarchy of tasks and really commonly seen questions that I myself was getting at NTK, plus materials from Eurodoc to create this kind of STEMskiller hierarchy that we'll see live in a little bit. Within these categories, what are typical actions that people perform at the doctoral and above level, and where's information they can get on this? So the goal is that people can click through the hierarchy very quickly, very rapidly. They don't have to do a search. They don't have to get lost on Google. They know they have STEMskiller to go to, but I've had even professors come to me. They said, I spent 4 hours looking for a good video on interviewing on YouTube and I couldn't find one. We're trying to solve these problems here. And we have to a certain extent by providing good resources. So, and these things make sense, again, to professors, maybe not so much to early career researchers, but talented ones should know about it. But even those lost people, like I said, where their mentor told them, write a paper and publish it in a journal, can go through to research, find someone said present at a conference, and they can see that you can see the tasks on the screen. So they can, for an academic presentation, find information about selecting places to present at a conference, preparing for a conference, different aspects of that, presenting different aspects of that. Not everything. This is curated. It's not the whole universe that's represented in, but things that we commonly encounter and that most professors that I collaborate with asked for and want to see, plus things that Eurodoc finds are interesting. Okay. So before we do our live demo of STEMskiller, and again, just hold your questions till the open session in a little bit. But I see the chat, so great. Use the chat there. Case studies. So I wanted to just give you a couple case studies of when I've used STEMskiller, and they're real examples. And I know you use this in some other settings for K through 12 and for the bachelor and master seminars. One example, this was from just a few weeks ago. A researcher I work with was had a postdoctoral position that was open, and they were getting a lot of applications, but a lot of not just bad applications, but decent applications from the scientific side of the CDB, but very poorly written cover letters. These people could hardly express themselves in their cover letter. And the professor really tries hard to help people, even if he can't hire these people. So he had two candidates that he thought were good candidates on the scientific side. And he was like, I think I should give them one chance to rewrite their letter. And then I'll evaluate them with the other candidates. So he said, Stephanie, can you, I know in STEMskiller that there was that link to writing a good academic cover letter. Can you send it to me? And I'll send it to them, and we'll give them one week to rewrite their cover letter, and then we'll view. Unfortunately, in this case, the students did not improve. They didn't even bother to read STEMskiller, so they were not considered appropriate applicants for this postdoc position. But he used STEMskiller in that manner. So I had the actual mentor who was trying to be a mentor to even students that weren't his own students, providing resources. And it saved time for him, because he said, oh, I would have to write an email. It would take me 4 hours to write that email about the problem and about resources I know. He had, within 1 minute, the information he needed. He could write an email in 5 minutes, and everyone's happy and learned something. So that's what we want to happen with STEMskiller and with these interactions. I wanted to note, though, what this does require is familiarity with the STEMskiller hierarchy. And there will be one homework that's not mandatory after this, but that some of you, when it maybe over the holiday break, that you take some time and you start reading through STEMskiller, because there's a lot there. And I realized, and we'll talk more in future sessions about this, and Elena had conducted a survey of the academic services team about what they want to learn this fall. And a lot of questions are answered there. I wanted to answer a few questions in this webinar, and then STEMskiller answers a lot of things that people that you're wondering about, and I can too. So, all right, another case study. Mentor providing information about academic work to mentees. This is a nice example that I really like, because have you all seen this? I see Elena's face. It's really great. It's a architectural professor you see at CESAU, who through the CESAU network, who knows, maybe Nadia or others, or we're spreading the word, actually is showing STEMskiller here, and specific sections of STEMskiller for those who are starting to work on their dissertation. So this is also something I like to see. It means that it saved the mentor time. This person didn't have to write a whole web page or a blog about writing. They just link to good resources. And then it's the student's responsibility to read, and then to come back to the mentor with questions. That's what ideally we want, is that, some of the best students are able to see that material, work with it, and they're good to go. They don't need anybody's help. They don't need their mentor again. But oftentimes we as mentors want the students to do a little bit of homework and then come back to us with questions they have. So that that burden is shared. And everybody does have a little bit of responsibility, because things like a dissertation or preparing a really long European Union grant proposal, these are not easy tasks. And once you get to this level, you need people to read, you need people to write, and there needs to be a little bit more rigor. And so, but this is great. I was so pleased to find this when I was going through preparing for this presentation. And here's another local example from the Davis campus. This is a student at UCT Prague. She's an international PhD candidate, and she has a good mentor. But last year during COVID, her mentor kind of disappeared for whatever reason. And she had really difficult time reaching her mentor. I know some of you have experienced this yourselves. she has great mentor who really helps her usually, but these situations can happen. So she had to start preparing to write her dissertation. So I said, okay, here's the section on dissertations and PhD theses, and read it and learn from it, and come back to me and tell me, what did you learn? What did you see? She was learning from these resources from the best universities. And you see here on the slide the things that she went and spent time reading, thinking about it, and she found a lot of good stuff that really made sense to her. And many of you who work with the students can see those common problems reflected here that we see with bachelor and master level students, same at doctoral level that we often talk about. Defining a writing schedule, so organization. So she found some great tips there that I had found that really were helping her. And she, in fact, told me she restructured her day to test some of the tips that she discovered, which was really great for me to hear. She learned that she could use other dissertations as examples. Many of us know this already, but she discovered that all by herself, so it seems like hers to her. And one thing she told me, she's like, I had a scientific writing class at my university, and it was awesome, but I got a paper that my mentor even rejected twice, and I don't know what to do. So I had to read more about my writing skills. And she said, oh, I learned I have to actually develop my own writing style so that my papers make sense to other people. So this was really great. This is, and this is where you kind of see the movement of a doctoral student into a real person who could have a PhD or conduct research. This is where they need to be to able to complete that task of writing a dissertation. So those are some case examples. And I know some people are going, so thank you for all of that. And let me just, the slide advances a little slow with this. All right. So now I'll just go into STEMskiller for about 10 minutes before we open up things to questions. I'll just show you the areas that you saw on the screenshots in the slide. And so that you can, when you do your homework and studying STEMskiller, or when you're at the desk board, look through a section, what you can find there. So I won't go through every single page because there are about 500 pages. So Safshan, I counted. And I wanted to talk about the main things that are there, the definitions, and what I tried to do with the definitions and annotations, because it relates to neutrality, but I want to show you a real example and then show you the kind of links that are there. All right, so I'll jump out of PowerPoint now. So just give me a moment to do that. And we'll go into STEMskiller. So, all right, so this we just saw. STEMskiller, again, is a browsing tool and not a searching tool. You can search it, but we decided in envisioning STEMskiller not to use keyword search because of this ease of use that I mentioned before for the professors that I work with. They specifically requested a hierarchical structure. This may be because they're engineers, but I actually think the hierarchical structure works well in showing doctoral students and early career researchers what this job entails. I think that is very important because I see in the chat, and I see from, many of us have talked about before, and I know some of you on this call, you get kind of a research topic as a doctoral student in Czech Republic, and it's so narrow that you don't even know that you're supposed to teach, or you don't know, so the intent of the hierarchies is also to show people that breadth of the discipline and what's really required to do a doctorate and to be an earlier career researcher. And again, to show the mentors that this is available as well, because there are many mentors that have never had a teaching methods class, many mentors all around the world, and they don't even know that that having being a doctoral candidate is the ethics in many disciplines, that being a quality teacher is part of the job, not just being a researcher. And I think that gets lost in many countries, not just Czech Republic, but in many countries. Again, you see the career management, and we went through those topics before. I just wanted to highlight here in the middle of the page, you see to provide peer review for annotations. Right now, STEMskiller doesn't have any peer review. We'll just tell you that because Jan Zeeman, the professor that I work with most closely and who volunteered to help me with that, he's looked at STEMskiller, he agrees to it. He talks about it in the context of the CTU HR Excellence Award, but he hasn't had time to do peer review. So I reached out to some other scholars, and we knew this would be a problem, but it's not a big problem, but we wanted to, for the annotations, really have them be scholarly in nature. So there may be a time in STEMskiller, maybe after COVID is maybe no longer in our lives, if that ever happens, where people will have more time and less craziness and have time for peer review. But right now it's not implemented. And we also wanted people to propose other resources. So far, no one's done that, except I got one email that was forwarded to me from the info box at NTK, I think from Vojta, about someone who wanted to basically use us as an advertising service. We do not, I do not, and I feel very strongly about this. The content that I link to in STEMskiller is non-commercial in nature whenever possible. There are some commercial resources available, but there are things that are available openly, and I don't want to serve as an advertising platform for tools and services. So STEMskiller is not everything. Again, it's a curated list of good resources, and this is really important. We wanted things to be high quality, to be useful, and not be like an encyclopedia of everything. And again, on top of everything I mentioned already, this was to avoid information overload for people, because you all know how hard it is working with all the information we receive every day. We wanted to keep things manageable for people's mind. All right, so these sections, let me just quickly scroll through them and show you a sample entry, and then I've been talking so much, I want to give you all us time for questions, discussions, and we can look at specific things that you're interested in. So research and scholarship. Here in STEMskiller, there is a definition for everything. I also wanted to provide, I think some mentors actually don't know, for example, what is scholarship? What are they doing? Like I have met researchers that really don't understand. They write projects, they have some topic, and I don't think they actually understand what they're doing. Maybe they have found a way to get grant money for it, but I will be honest, I don't think they understand what is the point of the research that they're doing, and what do universities do, all of this kind of thing. A lot of people know, so this is my kind of, so in the definitions and the annotations, sometimes I wanted to do a little bit of education. What's a neutral for good mentors? And ones who wish to be better, and for the younger early career researchers who want to be really great professors. What is this all about? What's the point of all of this? And so some of the definitions are a little bit philosophical in nature, but I want them to be, because I want to push the professors to think harder. So here, when you go through and read some of the definitions, some of them are really interesting. I was hoping that someone would write me and discuss them, but so far not. But so that's good and bad, but ideally, but I understand the past 2 years, I think people just don't have the capacity to think about things like this. All right. So, and then each area has a brief definition. And then in the first stage of STEMskiller, I've tried to have 1 or 2 resources for every topic. We've considered adding ebooks to this, but the thing is, it gets to be too big, too small. And I really, took a lot of time selecting resources for this. I want to be very selective. So we might have discussions, if you have ideas about this, feel free to let me know, or when you're working with a student, I'm happy to hear your thoughts about it. But, I think it's enough, because people, like I said, get lost and are overwhelmed by the information. So they're openly available resources with an annotation that I wrote. that basically describes the resource. So in a similar manner to those of you who have a subject guide, you know, the annotations that you did for your subject guides, just a little bit longer. I've included some tags, and I'll talk about that at the end. That's not important for this discussion. And then what we've done here, and Sasha was really helpful in implementing this, is there are breadcrumbs at the front at the top for people to go to navigate through the hierarchy, and also breadcrumbs at the bottom, which we thought was really important for people in exploring related content. So what you see here below is everything related to research and scholarship. So academic presentations and posters, aspects of that. Academic reading and writing, aspects of that. Academic and scholarly publishing, aspects of that. Completing a doctorate. This one doesn't really fit the hierarchy, but we added because we get so many questions about this that I wanted a special section devoted to this. So this is the random category, but it works so far with our users. This one is huge, designing research projects and research methods. I think this is extremely important, and every day I think it's more and more important. And here we have a few resources, but these many doctoral candidates, postdoctoral researchers and actual researchers don't know enough about their research methods, I would say, in many that I work with, and they need to. So, and I was talking to a researcher just on Monday, and she's like, you know, I actually don't know the recent methods of my field. Can you help me? Can you do a search for me of the methodology in the last 5 years in my topic? She's like, no one else is working in the country on my topic, and I need to improve, and I can't find what I need. So this at least helps people think. She's like, I can't write a good paper anymore without a good research method. No one will accept my work in the good journals. That's the kind of inquiry that this is geared to. Then research data. This is a hot topic. You may have heard at different conferences on campus lately in the past year is all data. There's a lot about data, but it's actually not that complicated. And if you go through STEMskiller, spend a day reading about it, you'll feel much better. And you could actually be in almost any discipline, read through the resources I found here, and you might not be a data expert, but you would know kind of what's the situation right now with data. This is a category discipline specific competencies and skills that was requested by Jan Zeeman at Civil Engineering because he finds, so it has only one category right now. In the future, we want to add to this, maybe with other mentors who have time. Again, like we don't want to ask, before we get peer review, there's no point in expanding this out. But he really wanted mathematical literacy because he's finding at master level, his master level students, as mentioned before, don't have the mathematical skills he needs in a doctoral student. And he needs to give them remedial help. So this was designed pretty much for him and for others, some very basic resources about what they should know. So here are, this is a test for graduate students in the United States in mathematics. What is kind of the core level of mathematics expected at the best institutions in the world for people working in English? This isn't like self-study material or textbook sets in other places, but kind of what's the core that a student should know. And like these resources, I just want to show you here, are kind of, they have sample tests, they have sample problems, sample other preparatory materials. So this is the kind of discipline specific material that gets really a little bit more narrow, but that is out there and really high quality. And I think people don't realize this. They also don't need to pay some tutor. If they're talented in math and, they just need to fill in some gaps. Basic resources can really help them. So there's that. And here you can see, we can jump back up the hierarchy. Here, and then we'll be back in research and scholarship. So it might be a little bit confusing. It's not like the best interface in the world. It's working with our NTIP web template, but it's serving the job it needs to serve right now. Ethics, this is kind of just basic introduction. Some of you who've taught the ethics class may have looked at that. And then perspectives on open movements. I think we hear a lot, and Cray was on open science. Everyone, again, it's a big hot topic, hot trend. There are a lot of nuanced aspects of open movements. And without knowing a little bit about history and why these things developed, it's hard to explain why there should be open science. Like if you don't know, for example, that software developers created open software to fight big corporations like Microsoft or Zoom. No, they're not programmers, but Big Blue Button. You know, if you don't understand the ideology kind of behind these movements, you don't understand why it's so important. And I think that's a lecture for another day. So, but if you look through STEMskiller, you're confused about some of this stuff. If you look at the definitions in some areas, they might be kind of helpful for you. So for example, open education. This is really inspiring. It's open education is a movement that was started by the United Nations in 1948, basically saying that education should be free, at least in the elementary and fundamental stages, and higher education shall be equally accessible to all on a basis of merit. I think this is, a lot of people forget this. You see a lot of private school movements going on, and I believe in public education. So I'll reveal my card. So it's really inspiring to think of open education. So it's an alternative to corporate solutions to things. So there is a little bit of philosophy behind STEMskiller as well, as a public servant that I feel like I am. All right, just a couple more minutes of explanation before we get to questions. So learning and teaching, you've seen now how the entries look like, so I'll just show you the categories to familiarize yourself with them. And again, you can explore on your own. This was a specific section that I really am proud about because it's about teaching methods, about creating curriculum, about creating good exams, creating lesson plans, all of that good stuff. One of my master's degrees is in education, so it was a real joy for me to go back to that and to share this material with others. And as information about inclusive mentoring, being a good mentor for diverse groups, for example, online teaching, and then how do you write a class, for example? How do you write a semester-long class? Most of the doctoral students I know never have to do that. And then they get thrown, if they are lucky and get a full-time job, then have to do that. And no one's helped them before. I'm talking about European PhD students. There's a lot of helpful stuff out there. A lot of the best universities, again, have support teams who help with this. But at least here in STEMskiller, anybody in the world who knows English can come here and kind of, the playing field is level. They can learn about how to create a good lesson plan. Problem solved without having to have that service at their university. So yeah. And then early career researchers in the classroom. These are, again, specifically materials very similar to the other materials, specifically geared more towards doctoral students and postdoctoral graduates. And then career management, the most useful that I use on a daily basis, leadership and teamwork. I do use, as I mentioned before, with the research group leader that sometimes faces issues of managing his team, for example, managing a diverse team of people with different cultural backgrounds who misunderstand themselves. Within research groups, there can be conflicts and people fight with each other, and how to manage that. What our universities have policies, but the principal investigators, particularly in super nerdy fields like engineering, have, might not be used to communicating with others. They're maybe more used to communicating with computers than with people, and they need help understanding, there's a fight going on in the research group. I don't know how to manage it. What do I do as the research group manager? You can find information here about what to do there. Tenure process, you saw the pyramid. This is all about the pyramid. Placement and job searching, again, we're getting people to the right place, including applying for academic jobs. I know some of you have had questions for that or will be preparing some of these letters. There is stuff you can start reading here about that. What are application essays and teaching and research statements? Often people don't know, and that guy I mentioned in Holland, he didn't know, he was asked to do for his application to the professor position, 2 statements, a teaching statement about his philosophy of teaching and a research statement about his philosophy of research. He had never heard of that before. So the resources here provide examples, they can be discussed, and they're good. Yeah, and a lot of mentors never tell people about this in my experience so far. All right, interview techniques for academic positions. This one I wanted to emphasize, YouTube has a lot for commercial positions, which is why this commercial non-academic positions is shorter. Like if you're going to work for a corporation, there are a ton of YouTube videos on LinkedIn tutorials, all of this kind of stuff for you. But applying for a professor job is a totally different thing. And you need to prepare for it differently. How to negotiate your salary, all of these kind of life lessons that people might not know about. Self-promotion, that's that, networking, showcasing. You know that from the webinar that Olga and Nadia did recently. And then one question I often get, where academia and the private sector intersect in terms of budgeting, accounting, that kind of thing. Managing a project budget, for example. Startup issues, patents, legal standardization. And once you get into these areas, there's not everything there, but there's a background of why this may be important to people. And finally, well-being and strategies for dealing with these issues. And really good resources. I found a lot there in the UK, really. So that was interesting to me. So it's kind of fun to explore. Mentioning the UK, I tried to be international in scope in the resources, and I tried to find more European resources, but I did find more, not just because I am biased, and I will admit that because I am from the United States, but the American universities typically have more support services and a lot more of these resources that I could link to. So I wanted to be as inclusive as possible and tried to be so, but I know I haven't fully succeeded in that, but that's where I need suggestions from others. That's my own bias. All right, and then this is also one of my favorite sections because it's fun and I think important for the world and for professors to think about what is the academic endeavor? What is academia? What's its history? Why are these weird traditions like going through this pyramid process? Like, why is all of that? So there's a little bit of philosophy there that you can read. Impact and public engagement. This is, you see with examples right now in real life, it's kind of in our face with COVID. The doctors that are engaged with the public that believe in vaccination don't believe in vaccination. So public engagement defined broadly, but that's a nice example, including engagement with schools and our colleagues that, volunteer at the zoo and those kind of things or have volunteered, that's public engagement. Citizen science kinds of things. But it has many aspects that you can read about and that people don't realize. And then converging of sciences and technologies and disciplines, definitions. I would love to expand this section, and I might do that when I have a spare moment in early next year, because I'm a big believer in interdisciplinary and transdisciplinarity, but definitions are there, which is all you need at this point. Responsibility and integrity, what is meant by these words? And then values. Why is sustainability such a big topic at top universities these days? That's one of those big complex problems. And a lot of people, for example, I have researchers that do concrete research and they know it's environmentally harmful and they need to apply for Horizon Europe grant, the new round of Horizon, the EU grant, research grants is called Horizon Europe. They're like, how do I frame this? And oftentimes I see in their papers, they say, we're trying to make concrete more sustainable, but it's really not what we're talking about. So they need a little bit more background reading to be able to, in the introduction to their paper, explain better why they, what I often work with is, it's not like making concrete sustainable, but how do you describe why the concrete is more sustainable than another solution? This they have problems with. So there's some resources here that can help people. Global engagement, what's meant by that term, fostering creativity. I want to add more resources eventually to this, but there's a couple of things that I found that were intriguing to me. And understanding risk. This was a wish from Professor Milan Jurasic. that was a random wish from a professor. Why risk? Because in grant proposals, they often have to do a little risk chart. Like, what are like a SWOT chart, basically. And they need some basic information that they can give to people who are helping them write proposals or postdocs about an introduction to the risk concept. So basically that's STEMskiller in a nutshell. And now I want to stop sharing and stop talking and open it up to discussion. Let me just quickly review the chat and give you all a chance to think about everything. That was a lot. I know my lectures are always a lot in one session, but I hope that it was different enough that I at least woke you up on a Friday afternoon for a few minutes. And yeah, so open for questions. Thoughts, comments. Sasha, any provocations?
Not provocation, but I would just, because that's how we communicate. I see three of us with Alena. So trying to when start doing something in deep, so to remind each other of what everything it was supposed to be. So I just want to add to the colleagues and listening to your presentation as a colleague. So what's some basic problem? So why STEMskiller as it is? Because the universities and the colleagues that we meet around, generally, as Stephanie said at the beginning, and that you've seen through your praxis, lack the support in many aspects of what it is to be a researcher or the university professor. So then no one knows exactly what is that the best practices, what everything should be incorporated in that. So say very example, I am the young one who wants to get the Nobel Prize and wants to get the offer from MIT or wherever after I get my PhD at CVUT. So what am I supposed to know? What is it made of? Because I learned here as much as I could. So I obtained honestly my dissertation. I published 2 articles that had citations and an impact, but still, so now I'm moving in my field and in the world of academia. So how do I compete? How do I don't look stupid in the eyes of any international community? What is the difference? Our universities will not, our universities have some weird manners. So they solve problems by establishing departments for the problem. So there is a problem of open science, and now we have to open department for open science in order to address the problems. There is the problem of ethics, and it's not how that thing works. So from the very basic point of view, this thing should shut the mouth to the people, to people who always complain, oh, I can't, I don't know where to start, I don't know what is that all made of. No, so things, yes, my university, oh, it's easy to do that in the technical university of München, because they have all the kind people of support, they have the thing. No, yes, you don't have, but you are still the scientist, you still work, and you cannot be a little bit PhD. Yeah. If you do that, that's international. You write that in English, and that's for the world audience. You don't publish in some obscure journals. If you want to do that, at least you need some guidance. And who is there to give you a guidance? University. STEMskiller probably should be written by some university or engaged. But universities don't have time for those things.
Yep.
So they come to us, and the students come to us because no one else takes care of that. And still they need to ask somebody who is not doing that just for the grant proposal, and who is not just doing that because it's the job description. So we were learning from them, they from us, and they found NTK in most cases as some place that they trust, that is helpful, and they have people who know what they are talking about. If they are talking about, and most of the topics that STEMskiller is covering, we as a library specialist, as information specialists, this is just not our domain.
Yeah.
But we are there to point out to the instances to which when somebody comes with the question or asking for assistance in something that you, as an information professional, cannot do, you can show over. But it's not just sending the link. We are now showing to what our colleague, Stephanie Kruger, who is doing the annotated, could take that to the work in the real problems of academia, but inside and helping with domestic academia and international. What she found and signed by her names. So this, all the comments there, all annotations, all the selections are made by one professional.
Yeah, and that's why we wanted peer review. Yeah.
So who is sending you and telling it's not arbitrary? And why the structure, why is it browsable instead of searchable? Just to see what is the complex, because in the all of us have experience that somebody wants a quick solution for something that cannot be solved without the context. You cannot just go and get a perfectly written English article to submit. There are so many things that to know about, and who am I to torture somebody and to explain how to do? I'm not a scientist. I'm not a STEM scientist, but I can tell, oh, I know I was working here and there, and then have that. This is my credentials, and my credentials can show you to the sources. They are not just linked to because that's the famous university is doing, but all the sources are there, are tried and used in the practice. So that was all I wanted to say, just to get an idea why so much, why to engage so much work to do something so big. So because at the end, when they come to you, when they come to us to have somewhere to tell them, they usually don't know what they want, and there is a question. Oh, it's easy. Oh, it's easy for you to tell you have time to do that, or it's easy for them. They are very rich and famous university. No, you can be with your little research group with one student. This is what is it all about. I'm not teaching you about that. I'm referring you to the things that we have seen, the real life and the real best examples, what could work, and what those people who deal with that problem well, what they do, how they deal with the problem.
Yep, exactly.
I have few comments or experiences, but I want to give space, colleagues. So somebody, do you want to add something from your experience or PhD or as information professional?
Can I?
Yes, please, Nadia.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everyone. I have a question to Stephanie. Maybe it's some off topic of the STEMskiller, but about the PhD, doctoral education.
Yes.
I want to ask you, do you want about new reform of doctoral education in Czech Republic, and maybe what do you think about this reform? Its reform actually is preparing, and I suppose next year it will be maybe approved or not approved. I don't know.
Yes.
But what do you think about it, if you know this reform?
I haven't heard the specifics about it. What are the major highlights? Yeah, I haven't. My professors haven't told me. Nadia, do you know? Yeah.
I hear about this reform on the conference in NTK. It was some months ago. And for me, the main topic was that the Ministry of Education want to leave the same number of the PhD. Not candidate, but PhD, and spend less money for this.
Yeah, I would say that's not a great long-term strategy. You know, I mean, I would say it's great to compensate PhD level. I recall now, I think what you're talking about. I think that giving higher PhD stipends for students in Europe is a good idea. The cost of living is growing. I think that's fine. I think along with that, it's an okay reform if people are getting more money, and if the number of students you said is planned to stay the same, right? So fewer students with more money or more students with more money. I would say that the number of students, in my opinion, at the doctoral level, unless a country wants to open up more full-time positions, I think it's a little bit of a lie in some cases to open up, to give a lot of people doctoral degrees who might not have a job afterwards. So the older I get, the kind of, I would say, this is my own personal opinion, I think that I don't like that some universities give students hope that maybe they'll get a job in academia when maybe there's not a job available to them. So I wish that with any reforms, they would kind of show the pyramid diagram to all PhD students and say, do you know what you're actually doing with this? I mean, I know why they don't do that, because, for example, Czech Republic budgets are based on the number of students, right? So this is the problem we see at bachelor level, master level, and to a certain extent, doctoral level. Universities, departments, our faculty are paid on the number of students they have. So, you know, they get money, mentors get money for the number of doctoral students that they have. I mean, they get more money. I think it varies from university to university, but they do get payment for each student. I think a lot of people don't realize that. I don't know how, you know, it varies from faculty to department, how that payment is managed. But, you know, I think that's why some mentors take on more students than they can handle, you know, and I think the question is, okay, if there are more students, you know, who are paid more, that, okay, good for students if they have a bigger stipend, that's great. But, you know, if you have more students to one mentor, the quality is going to go down because the mentor can only handle and mentor a certain number of students. It's hard to mentor well, you know, I would say a group of more than 5 to 10 people without substantial assistance and like co-research group managers and things like this. It's not impossible, but it's difficult. And, you know, I think I think there's a situation that I was reading in the, to go back a moment, in the Horizon research area, the European research area documents, they said that Czech Republic was one of the countries where they're not increasing the number of full-time teachers or professors, right? So those numbers are not going up. So, you know, you have a certain number of people, if the number of students goes up, the quality is always going to fall, in my opinion, you know. So you would need to open up new positions. And I think the big problem here is opening up new positions and doing something like Germany did, which is to mandate, you know, retirement at a certain age. So no one wants to talk about that in Czech Republic at all. But Germany finally did it. My mentor, for example, when he turned 65, he's at a university in Germany. He had to step down as director of his school, of his department. He was forced to. He can still work in the department, teach a few classes, but he, by German law, is not allowed anymore to be a full, which opens up positions. And with that, with his payment, with the amount of money, they were able to open 2 new researcher positions. So this is a real elephant in the room that people don't want to talk about, but I think it needs to be discussed at some point in many places. Does that help answer your question, or is there more?
Yes, thanks for your opinion, and I want to say that at our faculty, each mentor has a limited number of students.
That's right.
But a limited number, for example, number of students which have to finish, they graduate in the certain year. It's maybe 15 students, and all of bachelor, masters, and PhD.
So the whole.
So like a common number of students from all these degrees. Some complicated situation for the associated professors or professors who prefer to work with PhD students, not to master students, of course, because they want to spend their time to the high quality research or high quality education, not for bachelor students.
Right. And you see that, a lot. I think that's, I mean, you do see that. And of course, people want to spend more time doing research. And I have professors doing it who say the same. And I think one thing that, again, it's because universities are funded by the number of students is, there aren't always application standards. So the bachelor and master level can sometimes be lower. I think sometimes why as older professors, they get frustrated by maybe the levels that they're seeing is that sometimes the standards are dropping a little bit in certain fields because the high school quality might not be, it kind of builds upon itself. You have the quality of high school, quality of bachelor, quality of bachelor. So it can get frustrating if the students, like some of the older professors, they should know these things. They should know, I think a lot of that frustration comes from, bad admissions decisions at the bachelor level, and also preparation, a lot of, I read yesterday the strategic report of Maastricht University, and they want to do by 2028, right? Which is 7 years from now. They want to improve levels of math for their bachelor students, right? Because people are seeing some math numbers dropping, for example. And but what do we do in the meantime? Like everyone working in education has to deal with the problem. And they want to maybe have a few more summer schools but there's no formal statement that says like, okay, if someone doesn't meet the level of a bachelor student that we think we should have, they have to go back and do some basic courses before we let them in the program, let's say. And I don't see that happening in Czech universities. I do see it happening in American universities because the same problem is happening. And there are a lot more programs, like preparatory programs for bachelor degree, preparatory program for master degree. So they're a lot stricter with admissions. And then they get those student numbers through the preparatory numbers. I think what Czechs haven't been clever enough to be like, oh, because it would require change at the ministry level. Oh, we could get our student numbers if we, instead of bachelor students, have like preparatory 2 years, and then we move them into bachelor. You get 6 years. There's no way to fund a student like that right now at the national level. And Bologna, when we talk back about the Bologna process, didn't envision that. They didn't think about these problems. They basically were like, okay, we're going to educate more people and get more people with bachelor degree. And you think about it, they're people we don't have to work employing, they're theoretically learning and going to be better in the future and all of this. They're going to be learning as they get their bachelor degree, and we don't have to, it's basically like a social service, right? University in a country like Czech Republic where it's free. So yeah, I can understand. And I do see professors that get burnt out and refuse to teach the bachelor and master students or take a year off because they can't deal. Like one colleague of mine, he's on Fulbright in at MIT. I don't think I've told you about him, Nadia, but he was so tired of working. He would get the bachelor students that had failed their exams at least twice. So they had one last chance. He loves working with students, but he just was so tired of them not listening in class, not paying attention. He'd have maybe one interested student, and he doesn't mind teaching. He actually enjoys teaching and he does his best, but he finds it so disheartening when all of them, his failure rates, and then people are gone and then they just move on to the next subject area, right? So like he feels like his time is wasted because like in his class, he told me last semester he taught was basically 80% failure rate, you know.
I completely understand.
You know, yeah.
I know.
so, you know, I without having a special support service just for those students, you know, because he's also expected to do research, right? So it is hard, you know, that's the Sherpa picture. It's so hard to do research and teach these difficult students well. Like it's two different things, right?
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right, anyone else? We can go if I've got a few more minutes. Those of you who need to go, I know this is the end of our schedule time, but I can chat about anything else for those of you who wish to stay longer, or we'll call it a day. So is that it? It's Friday afternoon. I know it's been a long week, not just with work, but with life. So hang in there, everyone. Stay healthy, stay sane, ignore the news, try to focus on things that make you happy. Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please. Hi, Ibrahim. Good to see you.
Hi, hello. We miss you so much.
We're virtual.
Thank you very much for the webinar. Really.
Yeah, you're welcome.
The question is, I don't know if it's a question, but how can we convince the mentors or the supervisors that they have to follow some guide in order to let their students or PhD students, like, I mean, how can we advertise this guide somehow to the mentors or?
Right, what we've been trying so far is have excited good mentors are sharing it with their friends. So yeah, it's kind of self-selected. They give it to because it's threatening, like Sasha said, to the bad mentors, right? Like, because it shows it's also not rocket science. It's like, if you know like these things and tell your students, like your students will be internationally competitive so it kind of takes away their mystery, right? So the bad ones are kind of threatened by it. So I think that it would have to be kind of, I've talked about that with Jan Zeeman and in the past, and you know, it kind of has to be, I feel more and more that either at the departmental level, one of the levels, departmental, faculty, or university level, somebody has to make a decree and say, this we're going to list on our web pages. All of you mentors have to follow these standards, you know, and I haven't seen the leadership at the level of faculty or university yet. I've seen it at even departmental, like in Jan Zeeman's group at his department, we can get little victories, right? Like little ones, like we can link to STEMskiller, right? But in his department, he can't get like the head of the faculty to tell mentors what they can or cannot do. So it's very, very difficult in this hierarchical structure. But what we do is we keep on trying, and then we try in different forums. And then like Jan Zeeman, for example, he's working for CTU on the HR award, which is a European Union grant that the university got that a lot of professors are getting money from. And it's supposed to make better standards for mentorship. But those standards are basically, because Jan Zeeman's in charge of that section, we wanted to make some standards like you're talking about. And the project had a really kind of open-minded leader for a while. Then someone new came in, like one of those Project Shark people, you know them. And so basically what mentors will get is, at least it's been distributed to all of CTU at the high level, right? People on this HR award to the different faculties, but no one can order anyone to use it yet. And for promotion and tenure, like the other thing that would need to happen is for habilitación, they would need to include, there is a service component and there is like academic service and teaching, but on CTU campus, I hear day after day, the professors are like, our focus is research, not teaching, not mentoring, you know? So there has to be a
publishing.
Yeah. And has to be, even though in their strategic report, like I'll send you the strategic report has that they want to focus on education, but their actual practice is just that for rankings and to get the rankings up, and it has to come from the level of rector. And until there's a rector who has balls, let's say, like put it in American slang, you're not going to see it happen. If you had a really great rector, it could happen like this. And
Correct.
you know, maybe what would have to happen in a Czech context is an economic crisis where they actually have to fight for money and fight for students in a level they don't have to right now. But so far their funding has been stable enough, you know, because Czech's kind of stable, that they haven't had to really do those battles. So it's hard, and it's really sad, as you know, because you get into situations where and life becomes just publishing. It's also sad because a doctorate shouldn't just be about publishing. It's about many other things. And you know how are you going to finish your doctorate, Ibrahim, or did you?
Hope so.
But it's you're
I still have like 2 years, but let us see.
Right?
I still have 2 years. Yeah. We
you
need Godfathers. We need Godfathers.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. We do.
Ibrahim, I would just add to your question, one of our ideas when we started thinking about STEMskiller actually was the reaction of those stupid calls from both ČVUT and VŠHT. How do we attract more international students?
Yeah.
So they addressed Stephanie and me to help them with some magic, to show them some trick how to attract them more. So the answer they expected from us to tell them, you know, so you used to do this trick and all the best international students just go everywhere.
It's not true. It doesn't work like that.
So actually this is, if to go like in some ways, STEMskiller is answer on that stupid order that we got from them. We could not know what to answer them there, and so it took us the whole year and more than 500 pages to create in some reason, and basically STEMskiller is on the is our answer because there was no other. They don't want to hear that answer. So right. Go check what is in the world and how do you do that. It's not some kind. Oh, I have the bigger rating. This is you are an international student. So that's just one thing that came to my mind. For example, VŠHT has this policy, like if you decide to go to study in the Czech Republic, VŠHT is not your board's choice. It's not good. So and then you try to explain them that it should be said a little bit different. You said, oh, I want to study chemistry. And to go to study in Prague, it's great to study chemistry, but no one dares to do those things. And they say, oh, that's because we don't have enough English-speaking professors because we cannot pay them to teach here. But, you know, this is the game, and how to enforce this. This is the source of the biggest frustration. And still not to be negative. It seems from all our collaborations with the professors and administrators at the university, we learn, both Stephanie and Elena and Elena and I, that they always tell us, oh, let's do that through library. So you have much more impact as some colleagues, librarians from NTK on what we try to do than we as a very high position professors have in our own institutions. So that's the paradox.
It's true.
That still we push that to the STEMskiller through NTK because we were offered to do that also for ČVUT and for those things. We said no. And they said, actually, it's better because still might have
we're neutral
impact if it has NTK and done from NTK. Then if I come in the within a grant from European Union that is obligatory, so it has much lesser chances to do anything. So there is still, they hope that it might have bigger impact, and especially if it's signed by somebody like Stephanie, who doesn't have her own interest in all that. Like,
I'm totally neutral. Yeah.
Neutral, who doesn't have any interest in the academic politics.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for the answer.
A good question. We'll keep thinking about it because we try to think about it every day, kind of much. Yeah. And one last thing on that, Ibrahim, at least for the students that are talented, but in a situation that's not ideal, I feel like for my conscience that they have resources, to make up for what the university, that they have the ability, if they're willing to study, they have a resource that they can use, and they'll be able to apply for a good postdoc position. They'll be able to apply.
And also, Stephanie, as you said, to understand what is that about. It's
Right.
not just about teaching statements. So it's asked for me to apply for the job in Eindhoven. It is not just that it's some annoying thing that I have put on my application. That makes sense. And then because I cannot teach, anyone doesn't want to listen to me, and of course I don't want to listen to myself. But it's at least how that STEMskiller is done, how those links, what the things that how Stephanie made those things, how those things are connected. There is no simple, just my teaching statement is not just a piece of paper. It's about my mission and what is the mission of the school and what am I doing. And there is no more discrete way, but just to one, it belongs to that, it's that, it's that. If you want to solve the problem, so let's hope that you will discover what is that. If you, so unless you don't have a mentor to explain you at the very beginning.
Yeah. And it's a paradox, like, it's so great that it's a problem, not just in Czech Republic, but at many European universities, all of these things. It's a paradox that they invest so much money in the educational system. It's free, which is so great. And they could do so much. And it's like this much leadership. It could be like world class, it's like this little difference. And it would mean that universities, like I was also hoping that, I have colleagues in Turkey, in other countries that I shared STEMskiller with, that that they can also feel more confident when they go into interactions with, like, let's say MIT or something, that if you read STEMskiller, you'll feel more confident because you'll be aware of how scholars in the world are talking and communicating. And so
I mean, as an international student, when I want to search for a university, I mean, my first thing is that the mentors of the university, the professors, if they have reputation, if they are will value the university. This is my opinion as an international. Yep. This will value the university, not the university will value the supervisors and the mentors. This is my opinion. I don't know.
Right. And this is that where, also some education needs to happen before PhD, it is the worldwide researcher if your goal is to be professor, right? Like if you want to be the world's top electrical engineer in medical devices of X category, you are looking for that top researcher, but that top researcher also might not be a good mentor. And I've seen students get into big problems with that because the good researcher that publishes thousands of papers and is might not be the best mentor for that person. So a lot of people they need better mentors. This is that kind of cascade effect. They need a better mentor at the master's level that tells a talented student, because most people that do PhDs were successful students, in their school, in their high school, in the basic university studies, people whose school was pretty easy for them, that's usually who goes abroad. But they need a mentor at that level to say, what are your goals in 10 years if you do your PhD? And I've seen really sad cases. I've heard a lot of the opposite, where the master's has a good student at master level, but then they make that master student overconfident. And that's what Sasha was saying again. And I mentioned that students feel they'll get a Nobel Prize or they'll be Steve Jobs, right? Like you hear 1,000 students think they're going to be Steve Jobs. And of course, the media reinforces this image. Every person studying computer science thinks they're going to have the next big app or something. But the reality is not that. And then you need a mentor at the bachelor level, master level, and before you go to doctoral studies. Are you sure? Do you know what is doctoral studies for? Is it going to make you too qualified to go to business world? Because that's a danger too. In many fields, if you do your doctorate, it's hard to get a corporate job because they think you're weird if you have a doctoral degree. So should you even start a doctoral program? And then, a lot of those personal problems, people who drop out of the doctoral programs often feel bad about themselves, but, they may be making the most logical decision for themselves. And there are people who typically push themselves and were good students, and it's not a personal failure, at all if you just stop. It's just that you have a different life career path.
Correct.
And somebody should have told you that before you, in my opinion, before you apply for a doctorate. And I have a
Stop the dreaming. Stop the dreaming.
And be real. Yeah. But this is a difficulty. It's hard when you're a teacher because you want to inspire young people. You don't want to kill their hopes. You do want them to dream big. But for example, I'll use example. I had piano teachers. I played piano. I was okay. But they were really strict with us. Then we were in I was maybe 13 in piano, and they were they were professors and things like that. Really, one was a concert pianist, like the pyramid kind of guy. And he told all of us, unless you want to practice 12 hours a day, stop. You can take lessons, but don't study music. So he told us, we were shocked. We're like, oh, but he did now, as an older person, he did us so much good because he didn't make 12 mediocre piano students get a bachelor degree in piano that will never get, that then are working in Starbucks, so that's what needs to happen. And I think right now in computer science and in electrical engineering, it's hot field, but I think people, because also there's a lot of, it's not brainwashing, but there's a lot of influences. You have on Netflix, you have Steve Jobs, the movie, you have Steve Jobs, the YouTube videos.
Mark Zuckerberg.
So of course, this is a role model for people, but it's only one dude. And it was 50 years ago. So, Mark Zuckerberg, but there's one Mark Zuckerberg. Where's the next one? And people, and that's just the psychology. Young people always think it's but it works, it's
I will build, they are dreaming, I will build a platform like Mark Zuckerberg, and they don't think that, for example, Mark Zuckerberg made a startup, then he collected the big team to do that. Facebook is not like one person. They don't understand. That's all those, there are an army of IT people working behind.
And oftentimes working like slaves, semi-slaves. Yeah. So, working 14 hours a day from morning to night. And Sasha has some students from Cornell, from India. We know that they were working for some of the tech startups, and they were working on average 12 to 14 hours a day, and they had a good salary, but they had no life because they were just working. And they forced them to eat together. This was the worst. Not only were they working together, but if they even wanted to leave their building for lunch, they told them, we have free lunch and you must stay for lunch. And that's approaching slavery right there, IT slavery. Yeah.
IT slavery.
We know, yeah. Okay.
Thank you very
much. Great
much.
Questions, a great discussion. So well, it's good to really, we miss you all, and it's a hard time, but really my pep speech, try to stay sane, try to keep calm, try to do the nice things that you do for yourself, and avoid the madness. And at least we can have nice discussions like this on a different topic and use our brain and be together. And it's so great to see all of you doing your work. And I've been so happy to see the webinars this fall. So I have to make sure that you all did great. And I'm so proud of you. So I have to make sure
Effie,
Thank you.
You sound like the new PR department of NTK.
I know. I'll stop now, but
Okay,
I can't help it.
I have to go for another thing. So thank you